Welcome, lovely viewers of this show, bring you the best content in procurement in Ghana and across Africa. And today, I have Simon Annan. He's the FGIPS president for Ghana. He's a consultant and also works for the World Bank project with the Ministry of Finance. Today, our theme for the day is the industrialization agenda for Ghana. Over the years, we've been talking about how to industrialize as a country, the benefit it will accrue to us when we shift for the traditional way, that is from the agricultural base, where we are only focusing on the extractive side of our economy, to the manufacturing side, which also have various prospects of helping build the economy. So from the procurement perspective, we shall talk about the reasons and why it is important that we shift from our current system to industrialize as a nation and the benefits it will accrue to us as a people. So I'll be having this content chat with Mr. Simon Annan, and we'll have a very brief discussion. Probably later we'll proceed and we shall talk about various aspects within the industrialization agenda. So without much ado, I welcome Simon Annan to today's show. Welcome, Simon.
Thank you very much, Annan, and thanks to your viewers for having me on this show.
Okay, so today we want to talk about industrialization, but before I begin, I had a document which is titled the Asian Transformation Agenda, which was written by Deepak Nair. And in this particular report, he stated how these East Asian people have been able to transit from a country which was termed as a pit to become the global economy, where almost everything you can ever think of is coming from South Korea, China, Malaysia, India. They are becoming giants, and they didn't begin now. They went through a series of transformation to be where they are now. And within 5 decades, everything I ever think about in the world, they have it. So taking it from that angle and how they maybe transit, we are looking at the agenda aspect of Ghana. Where do we begin from in this particular agenda?
Annan, thank you very much for this question. For me, Ghana also started its industrialization way back 1963. So it's not that we haven't made an effort to industrialize the country. We have made significant effort in industrializing the country. I mean, back in the days when Kwame Nkrumah established the GIHOC, the Ghana Industrial Holding Company, the idea was for us to move into industrialization. For me, we had seen a lot of companies which were established in those days. But the point is that why haven't we been able to sustain to this time? If we had the same agenda, like the likes of Asians, the Koreans who had sustained their industrialization drive to this time, the question is that why haven't we done? Now, back in the days where we even had what you call the import substitution industrialization agenda, and then the export-led industrialization agenda, they were all coming together to foster the idea of industrialization. So Ghana had been on this journey ever since independence, or even before independence. So Ghana has also been on that journey, that trajectory, like the Asians and then the Americans and the Europeans. For me, the problem has always been the lack of political will sustain what other political parties have started, or other political leaders have started. So if we started from the year 2063, the same year when the likes of Korea and then the Asians started, and look at where they are now, and the company that they've been able to build, okay, out of this agenda, then for me, we have to ask ourselves a simple question: why are we doing this to us? We have to now have one common agenda, that not until we all agree to turn our economy from the import dependency to self-sufficiency, then we'll continue to depend on the global space. And then one of the things that I want to bring to attention of the listeners is that now globalization has become useless. When I say it has become useless, it's because of the Ukraine-Russia war, the COVID-19 we have all experienced. So now every territory, every continent is trying to look inward, not the global space. So as a country, if really we're going to move from this idea of import dependency, then what we have to do is to make sure that we will go back and then tackle the industrialization agenda. But let me also say that for the past few years, when we had the certain government talking about industrialization, a lot more had been done, and we have to now give them credit. My point is that then there should be some kind of leadership to drive that agenda and ensure that whatever the country is doing is communicated, is shown, is showcased to the outside world, and ensure that we do things that will bring sufficiency to Ghana. So to just answer your question, Ghana has also gone through this trajectory, and if we had more time, I would have walked you through where we started and where we've gotten to now. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much for the response to this. And as you said, we've also begun this journey already through several years, and we are somewhere, but we are not really seeing the level or the heights of the industrialization agenda that we began. Because we had tomato factories, we had sugar factory, we had a tomato oil factory, like many factories we can make mention of. But today, to go back to them, we can't really find them. We don't really find the value it is bringing to the economy. When COVID hit, we realized that we all went back trying to build in-house capacity to be able to feed ourselves. But I think over some time, we are going back to importation. I know the Ghana Export Promotion Center is trying to bring in investors and also try to help people, like contact people about the need to produce in-house and also export. But for me, in my point of view, I don't know seeing the quantum or how much these are bringing to help stabilize the economy. So moving forward from whence we are now, how can we begin to scale up or begin to speed the agenda of trying to build more industries to make this economy resilient in the years to come?
Thank you very much, Annan. For me, the industrialization agenda would have to be pursued from 3 points of view. The first one is that we have to ask ourselves as a country, what type of the industrialization agenda we are pursuing? Are we pursuing import substitution agenda? Are we pursuing export-led agenda? And in all this space, where does the supply chain sit? Where does the procurement sit? So when you talk of import substitution, as a country, we have to look at items that we can cut off by not importing. And cutting off means that there should be a deliberate attempt. There should be a deliberate policy to ensure that there are certain things that we can easily get it from Ghana and we don't need to import it. And I'm aware that the government is doing something. What is lacking, in my opinion, is the leadership. When I talk of leadership, if we're going to now cut off some of these, who is leading, who is communicating, who is telling the nation where we are going? Where are we going with our industrialization agenda? It's not about rhetoric. It's not about we talking about the fact that we are building the factory. It's not about we talking about the fact that we are cutting down costs. But where are we going? What are we doing? And you remember when Finance Minister announced the cutting down of of some of the importation or reducing the resources or the foreign currency for the importation of some of the resources. You see the backlash. It's because we are not prepared ourselves, okay, to meet the demand locally. So if you are not prepared yourself to meet the demand locally, there's no way you can say I'm not going to import. Okay, we have to now take that drastic decision to capacitate our industry. And I always use an example like the factory like in Confit juice. And why do you have to continue importing juice into this country when you have a factory which has been established under 1D1F to produce juice for the country? You know what? Why don't you even give one pack of juice to the school children as part of the free SHS meal? When as soon as you do that, the production of that factory increases, the capacity increases, okay, the demand increases. And when we do that locally, then now we are going to think about export. And I've talked about the export led. The export led is that, and that's what China used. China used the export-led industrialization, and it helped them. What did they use? What they did was to export everything that they were producing. And you cannot export when you don't have enough. So it means that they produce enough, they consume some, and then they export. In fact, within the Asian space, countries who want to export outside or want to go and establish businesses outside, they have what we call a business support system or a business support fund. Okay, do we have it here? So as a country, let's pause and say, okay, our industrialization agenda, which one are we pursuing? And the best practice means that we are pursuing probably the export led. If it's export led, what are the policies? What are the systems? What are the support? Because I'm also aware that Ghana Export Promotion Authority had developed Ghana National Export Promotion Strategy. Is it communicated to people? How many people are aware? Okay, how are we all rallying our support? How are we all running our effort towards that? And for me, when we do that, everybody will come on board, and we'll just take ourselves out of this import dependence. Because if we continue to depend on import, trust me, we don't know what is going to happen again. And the next catastrophe that's going to be before on the world, not in Ghana, on the world, because right now the globalization is useless. When another catastrophe before on the world, then how is Ghana going to survive? So this is the time I think that the leadership, the policy makers will have to sit down and then look at where we are taking our industrialization agenda to. And another aspect that we have taken out of it is the supply chain.
So in all that you are saying, where does procurement and supply chain sit in this agenda, and how can we also help to drive this? Because whatever the case may be, government is the hugest spender in this economy. A chunk of the money is buying things. So how then can we channel this particular expenditure to create more companies? Because see, in every year, most institutions buy computers, they buy toners, they buy PPEs, they buy several items to help the different ministries to run. But it looks like most of them are outsourced. Yet this money, if it's consolidated, it can help build industry over a long time. So where does procurement supply chain sit in this particular agenda?
Okay, so I've always called myself as a developmental procurement expert. When I say developmental procurement expert, I'm looking at how do we use procurement to industrialize our economy? And I've always spoken on industrialization and strategic sourcing, the inextricable link. Inextricable link because you cannot industrialize without thinking of strategic sourcing. You cannot also strategically source without thinking about industrialization. In Africa, in Ghana, we just buy. We don't strategically source. Because we buy, we just look at how much is this thing going to cost me. So we go to the supermarket, we go to everywhere. And what we do is that first of all, we check the price. We don't check about where we're going to put where the items is coming from. So our procurement power is linked to price, we call it price chiseling. It's linked to the cheapest price. So that's what we are thinking about. We're not thinking about how do I even pay a little one cedi more to be able to buy a local product and then help the economy to grow. Now, in the procurement and supply chain space, if we don't link it to the industrialization is going to fail. And for me, probably that's why as a country we have failed on our industrialization, because the procurement aspect is taken out. How do you open a factory in the northern region and there's no linkages, there's no market for it? The government, who is the biggest spender, is not able to buy from those companies because probably our procurement laws are rigid and we are not able to do that. So as an institute, and we are also calling for even the amendment, how do we now ensure that even our SMEs participate equally in the award of contract? How do you ensure that the factory which is built in my hometown is able to get produce or the product into the country? So the supply chain covers our procurement power, it covers our logistics, it covers our transportation, it covers our road network, and all these are interconnected. And we have to now think about holistically. And you hear when we're talking about Elmina Sugar Factory, where is it now? Do you understand? Where is it now? And that is a supply chain. To be honest with you, it's a supply chain. Okay, because as soon as the supply chain fails, every part of industrialization fails, because it's a raw material that we're going to use to feed the family. Farm factory, we feed the factory with raw material. We are feeding the factory with manpower. We are feeding the factory with things that will help the factory to produce. And it's all about supply chain. And because the supply chain is not taken at the highest level in the decision making, we just go in there without bringing these things on board, and it will fail. So for me, procurement plays a critical role in our industrialization agenda. And for us, as much as we continue to industrialize without recourse to procurement supply chain, we'll continue to fail as a country. Thank you.
Wow. Thanks for the comment on this. And I think this particular topic, we can't really talk about the vastness of it only today. So we'll come back today with the second part of this, because we all know that we have to be really intentional about the fact that we ought to move from the way where almost everything that we need in this country is imported to where we can begin to shift to a plane where we can provide for the basic things. So you can know where we can begin from, then over time we can transition to the huge things. So many things like tomato paste, like water, like fruit juice, like clothing.
So I read an article authored by one of the scholars on Korea industrialization or the local content development. And in that space, they started the whole agenda from 1967.
Yeah.
Within the space, there was a plan, every 10-year plan. So they started with the light goods manufacturing, moving into equipment, and then now they do industrial equipment. Okay, out of that program, that's why we have the likes of Samsung. If you go to South Korea now, Samsung contributes almost 60 to 70% of their GDP. Everything in the country is Samsung, because consciously, the government of the day pick those companies. We have Hyundai, we have Kia, we have all these companies that are coming from Korea. And for me, it is something that we can do as a country. It's a country that we know our problem, we know the solution. The only thing we are not able to do is the will. I call it political will, political prioritization, to ensure that what we started will be able to complete. And industrialization for me is key. And we have to, as a country, all rally behind what is going on and then do it. Let's get the right leadership around it, and Ghana will do well. Thank you.
I thank you for the last statement. You said that we are a country who knows our problem, we know the solution, but what we lack is a political will. So what we lack is a political will. May we begin to have a renewed mind. And as we speak about these things, may our authorities pick up this salient point. As I know works are already being done by the Ghana Trade Ministry, the Free Zones Board, the Ghana Export Promotion Center, and all that. They are all working tirelessly to ensure that this becomes a reality. But there is more work to be done. There's more to be done. And I believe that as we keep pushing harder and harder, what we desire to see in a few years will materialize. So thank you, Mr. Simon Annan, for coming on the show. We will continue next week on this same point, but we will delve much deeper. Today, we only spoke about the general aspect of industrialization in Ghana. We shall pick it in the area of procurement, and bit by bit, we shall break it down and look at how we can use this particular profession or this particular department to help spearhead this agenda in the years to come. So thank you for coming on the show, Mr. Simon. Any final comments before I wrap up?
Thank you very much. I think the topic is very relevant. Everybody's talking about it. And as I said, let's all begin to have a renewed mind. It's not about talking about it, but it's about implementing what we know. And as you said, this is just a general overview of the industrialization. So the subsequent ones, we can go into details. And when you talk of procurement, what steps procurement should take or supply chain should take to support the government agenda of industrialization. When you talk about leadership, when you talk of other aspects of industrialization, how do we understand, even going into the details, what the import substitution and export-led industrialization is all about? We can go into details so that we can educate our viewers. And we're just hoping that as we talk about it, our policymakers will also pick some salient point, and all of us trying to implement it, because this is the Ghana we have. And for me, that is the way forward, because the next couple of years, globalization, as I said, has become useless, but it will continue to become useless. And if you don't look inward, you'll be left behind. So thank you very much, Annan, for having me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simon Annan, for gracing the particular show. And my viewers, today ends the podcast for the industrialization agenda. We will continue next week with subsequent chats on this same topic. So stay tuned and bye-bye. Please, I will ask you to subscribe to my channel on YouTube. We are there as the Procurement Podcast with Enim Ado. On Spotify and on Apple Podcasts, we are there as Procurement Podcast with Enim Ado. So kindly subscribe and follow for any new updates on my channel. Bye-bye.